What an amazing success Susan Boyle had after her performance on Britain's Got Talent. She wasn't the choice at first, but her strong voice made everyone love her. She had a great career. She won America's Got Talent and the Champions, and she was worth more than $45 million. Then all of a sudden, no one saw her anymore. Come with us as we find out more about the singer and what happened to her. Being alive and well is proof that you should never judge a book by its face. She was born on April 1st, 1961. Patrick Boyle, her father, was a miner in 1-2 and sang. Bridget Boyle, her mother, worked as a typographist and did shorthand. Susan grew up in a council house in West Lothian, Scotland, where she now lives. She has 4 older brothers and 6 older sisters. Sue felt at peace with her love of music because she was turned down at school. She sang in the band at her parish church and also competed well in local talent shows. She thought she was too old to try out for Britain's Got Talent, even though her mother pushed her to do so. Even though it was fun to watch on TV, Susan couldn't try out when it began in 2004. But after her mother died in 2007, she didn't try out again until 2008. Up until her mother's death, she took care of her sick mother. She had never performed in public before this. Susan wowed the judges and fans of Britain's Got Talent in Glasgow with her stunning cover of I Dreamed a Dream. The chorus of the song got a standing ovation. Amanda Holden said it was the biggest wake-up call she's ever had because she keeps seeing how people look down on her because she's pretty. After she became known as Susan Boyle and became famous around the world, stars like Demi Moore and Ashton Kutcher began tweeting to support her. The most people watched her test video on YouTube more than any other video. Susan started her new life as an artist by going on tour with the other contestants and working on her first album. She came second in the competition and had some problems at first because she was so tired. Many people were moved by Susan's story, which showed that at any age, dreams can come true. When her first album, I Dreamed a Dream, came out in November 2009, it broke sales records by selling more than 2 million copies in just 1 week around the world. It is still the first album by a woman that sold the most copies the fastest. Susan's dream seemed as far away at first as the stars. The youngest of 8 children, she was born when her mother Bridget was 47 years old and didn't have much money to care for another kid. During the birthing process, her life was in danger, and Susan was told that her learning problems were caused by not getting enough oxygen for a short time. Later, when she was at the top of her game, she learned something completely new about her condition. It was hard for Susan to go to school. She was constantly picked on by both her classmates and her teachers. She talked about how hard it was to keep up in a system that emphasized speed and learning quickly in a very moving interview. She told me I was slow to learn. I just learned things a little more slowly than other people. You fall behind in a system that wants to move quickly. That was what I felt was happening to me. Her teachers cruelly punished her with a belt when she struggled academically. Her peers nicknamed her Susie C. Simple and constantly insulted her, making school the worst time of her life. Bullying and corporal punishment stunted her self-growth and created more obstacles in her academic journey. Taking the stage on Britain's Got Talent was Susan's subtle way of proving her tormentors wrong, showing she could achieve something great despite their cruelty. Her performance was a sweet revenge. She later wrote and performed You'll See on her first album, a song reminding her bullies that she made it despite their heartlessness. However, her path wasn't easy. In 2011, Susan revealed a tragic part of her childhood. Apart from the undiscovered learning disorder, she also had epilepsy. The doctors had given the correct diagnosis, but those who were close to Susan, her parents and teachers, couldn't deal with the epileptic condition. The doctors had made a correct diagnosis, but her parents and teachers didn't know how to handle Susan's epilepsy. This condition isn't unknown among musicians. Sir Elton John, Neil Young, and Lil Wayne also suffer from epilepsy. However, in Susan's case, the diagnosis was severely mishandled. She recalled having seizures at school regularly, which provided more ammunition for her bullies. She would faint during lessons, and upon regaining consciousness, her peers would gather around, call her names, and laugh at her. At home, things weren't much better. Her parents would overprotect her during episodes, and if the problem became too troublesome, they would leave her to fend for herself. When she asked for extra help, her father would call her touchy. The general assumption was that Susan's epilepsy was linked to her learning disabilities, which wasn't the case, so the condition went untreated. It is no surprise that Susan graduated from school with few qualifications. She had trouble finding a job due to her lack of qualifications and undiagnosed learning disability. According to Susan, she applied to many places but either didn't get a call back or failed after her first interview. She eventually got a job as a trainee cook at West Lothian College, which lasted only 6 months. Mostly she had to move from one government training program to another without a stable job or ample income. Despite these challenges, she found joy and solace in performing at local venues, which was the extent of her musical career until a tragic loss pushed her to pursue a dream she hadn't dared to before. Despite having a tough family life, Susan Boyle believed in forgiveness and selflessness. She didn't have much growing up and wasn't a romantic, famously saying during her Britain's Got Talent stint, "Never been married, never been kissed." Her modesty and decency led to significant life decisions. After her father's passing, all her siblings eventually left their 4-bedroom council house, leaving behind their old, sick, and frail mother. Only Susan and her 10-year-old cat Pebble stayed. Even after becoming a world-class musical artist and earning millions, Susan still lives in her childhood home, embracing the simplicity of her life. A neighbor mentioned that when her mother, Bridget Boyle, died, Susan wouldn't come out for 3 or 4 days or answer the door or phone. Susan is a practicing Roman Catholic, singing in her church choir and volunteering by visiting elderly members of the congregation in their homes. She described her life as mundane and routine before stardom during a 2010 episode of The Oprah Winfrey Show. In 2012, Susan was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome and made this public in a BBC interview in December 2013. Additionally, she also has epilepsy. In November 2012, when asked about internet dating, she joked that she was too scared, saying, "Knowing my luck, I'd go out on a date and you'd find my limbs scattered around various black-burned dustbins." In July 2013, Susan endorsed the Better Together campaign to keep Scotland as part of the United Kingdom in the 2014 independence referendum. She stated, "I am a proud, patriotic Scot, passionate about my heritage and country. But I am not a nationalist," she added. "We have retained our proud identity while being a part of Britain." Susan doesn't drink, and she has type 2 diabetes, which was first found in June 2013. In November 2014, the news said she had a boyfriend who she often said was her first boyfriend. The two were almost the same age. In 2022, she had a small stroke, which she talked about on a show on June 4th, 2023. When they got home from Britain's Got Talent, what do you think makes Susan Boyle want to stay in the house she grew up in? Even though Susan Boyle had a nice face, she didn't look great on Britain's Got Talent because she wasn't dressed up. But her beautiful voice blew everyone away, even the judges. People all over the world were amazed at how she went from being bullied in horrible scenes to getting standing ovations before, during, and after her performance. People all over the world watched Susan's interview clip over 100 million times in just 1 week. Videos of some of her earlier performances, like the one she did for Cry Made a River in 1999, went viral. During the show, Susan had to deal with being sick and tired. Even so, she did really well in the end and came in second place, just behind the dance group Diversity. She had won the most important fight of her life, though. In order to get popular support, the government increased spending on defense. People learned that they should never give up on their dreams, no matter how old they are, because of what Susan's show showed. I Dreamed a Dream, her first record, came out in November 2009 and was a huge hit. It sold more copies than any other female artist's first record. In its first week, it sold more than 2 million copies around the world, and broke the record for most copies sold in the UK. In pre-sales on Amazon, it also became the most bought record to date. You could tell the album was a hit. In fact, I Dreamed a Dream was the best-selling record in the world in the year it came out, selling over 9 million copies. SoundScan data from 1991 showed that this album by a new female act had the highest first-week sales according to Billboard News. In the UK, Susan Boyle broke several records after her album's success. She was the oldest person to break the highest record for a debut album and the fastest-selling album by a female singer. The album also sold the most copies in its first week. Susan's powerful voice and moving story were heard all over the world, especially in the United States. She went on America's Got Talent and got a lot of positive feedback. The days of being put down were over. Susan felt happy about her success and stopped being scared. She didn't just watch her own life, she really took part in everything going on around her. Susan liked being the main figure and was having a great time. After her first record did well, she put out 2 more, The Gift in 2010 and Someone to Watch Over Maine in 2011. After a short break, she came back with a fun record called Standing Ovation that had her best stage songs in 2012. After 2 years, she put out another new album called Hope. In 2016, she released A Wonderful World. Susan took a long break from working on her singing because she was getting old and having other health problems. In 2019, Susan shocked her fans by releasing an album called 10 that collected the best of her work to mark the end of a decade. Many people thought her music career was over. She beat all chances again and made her mark on the music business. She did well, but it brought her sadness too. Susan's loyal fans couldn't help but notice how much she had changed since she was given her heartbreaking news. She used to have a lot to offer, but now she wants to live a quiet life away from all the fun. There is a hint of sadness beneath her huge success. Susan thought about her job and said, "I hope people enjoy it as much as I did." You thought Susan Boyle's rise to fame was surprising? Get ready for some heartbreaking news that will change everything you thought you knew about her story. Could these new details change how you think about Susan's story? Let's find out. Susan Boyle was on Britain's Got Talent, which made her famous, but the long and hard training put her to sleep. She was happy with just music, but fame was something new. After being on the show, she had a hard time keeping up with the demanding schedule of interviews, smiling for the paparazzi, and putting up with mean and rude reviewers. Susan had a good name before the show, but she didn't win, and she had to go to the hospital right after the end. The 5 weeks of attention from the media had worn her down, and she was starting to feel weak. It came out later that Susan had a mental breakdown. Even though she was very skilled, she didn't get enough votes from the public, which made her lash out at the show's manager. From the set, it was said that Susan had yelled that she hated the show and thrown water at a staff member. It was so strange that night that the staff at her London home called the cops. After a few hours, Susan had to be taken to a mental health center. The news of her breakdown spread quickly, and it turned out that the makers of Britain's Got Talent had not paid attention to Susan's weak mental and physical health before the final. Ofcom, the UK's media regulator, wanted to look into the show because it put ratings ahead of the health of its players, but the plan was later shelved. Because of this, Susan learned to be less strict with her music routine. But she couldn't do it because she had a busy tour schedule coming up. Even so, she did a great job for her fans while she worked on her songs. In 2013, Susan's work took another hit when she finally got a correct diagnosis of her learning disability. It's interesting, though, that there was no real brain damage. It was a wrong judgment that was made about her young self. The singer was told she has Asperger's, which is a kind of autism spectrum disease. Hearing such a shocking truth broke my heart, but on the other hand, it was also a blessing. Susan thought for many years that a small problem at birth had hurt her forever. When she thought back on her school years, she felt like she was unlucky. But being told she had Asperger's meant she could finally get the right help for the first time in her life. Susan told The Guardian that being told she had brain damage always made her feel mean and unfair. She knew she was just like everyone else, but she did things her own way. Aside from that, she hoped that her finding would make people more accepting of neurodiverse people. She said, "I think people will treat me better because they'll know a lot more about me and why I do the things I do." Susan got a lot of support from both fans and critics after she made the brave revelations. People liked how real she was and how honest she was about her life, which is something that many people try to avoid. It got even worse for Susan because she had to give up her only vice that same year she loved chocolate. She made things more difficult when she was told she had type 2 diabetes. Even though Susan got her autism diagnosis at the right time, she had to deal with a whole new way of life while still getting used to it. Later, during the pandemic, she had to take extra steps to protect herself from the COVID-19 virus, which caused another rift in her singing career. At least 2.5 years, she had to stay home and not talk to anyone who could have helped her make another groundbreaking work. Susan's life wasn't just about getting fans and having records do well. Things were also bad at home. She used the money she made to buy herself a house in 2010. But some bad kids made her life awful by throwing rocks, trying to break in, and burning paper at her house. She finally went back to the house she grew up in and gave her fancy home to her niece. Susan was generally sad about these events, but her sister's illness caused her to take a short break before her 2015 return. Breedy was Susan's sister and died of cancer at the age of 73. Susan was very sad about her death because she was close to Breedy. Besides that, Susan had to watch over Breedy's kid. Breedy had been a helpful sister in many ways after Susan's huge success. She was there for Susan when the media looked at her for silly reasons like how she looked, and she kept her grounded when fame followed her around. During Susan's nasty fight with their brother Jerry, Breedy looked out for her. Susan had a lot of money because she was successful, and everyone, even her brothers, wanted some of that. Susie made a mistake when she gave Jerry £75,000 to help him save his failed business. When her brothers didn't agree, Susan said Jerry had told her he would kill himself if she didn't give him the check. They fought over this, and Jerry told everyone that Susan was lying. But Susan's public breakdown at Heathrow Airport in 2016 brought the siblings back together, finishing their fight in a sweet way. Susan Boyle's health problems have not gone away, which is sad. People found out in May 2022 that she had a small stroke, which made working on songs even harder for her. She told everyone this touching news after a great performance on Britain's Got Talent. Now she gets to sing with the group of Les Miserables in the West End, something that meant a lot to her. Susan said that going back on stage after her stroke was important. "Last April, I had a minor stroke and I thought it would be crazy to be back on stage, but I did it," she said. That night, she wrote on Instagram that she needed a lot of speech practice before she could sing her popular song, I Dreamed a Dream. It paid off for her to work hard. She is still working on her music job today, even though she is having some health problems. Even though she had a stroke that pushed back her plans for new music, the famous Susan Boyle still performs for her fans whenever she has the energy and will to. She just stays out of the public eye most of the time. Susan recently said that one of her biggest mistakes is not having children. Even so, she does have a secret life with an American boyfriend whose name is unknown to everyone in the media. In 2016, she told The Mirror that she was talking with an American doctor for fun. At that time, they were dating. Reports in the news since then say that Susan is now in a safe, happy relationship. She has no plans to marry or tell everyone about her partner, though. No one else knows about her love life, except that her boyfriend goes with her on important days like her birthday. Fans were looking forward to new music before her big showing on the show. It seems like Susan Boyle is always giving gifts, and while we calmly wait for her next musical project,